Some journeys do not begin with a landmark. They begin with a change in rhythm. Outside the train window, Brandenburg opens into fields, tree lines, and a sky that seems larger than the land beneath it. The view is simple, almost understated. Green meadows, drifting clouds, the blur of summer grass. But this is the first clue that we are leaving one Germany and entering another. The town is still ahead, but the landscape is already preparing us to slow down.
Lübbenau, Spreewald, Aufstieg in Fahrt.
Arrival in Lübbenau is not dramatic. There is no grand entrance, no sudden reveal. Just a railway platform, overhead wires, tracks stretching away, and a station sign under a bright Brandenburg sky. Leaving the station, the first images are unexpectedly playful. A mural covers the underpass walls with scenes of the Spreewald. Water, boats, timbered houses, trees, and local figures. Before the real town appears, the town gives us a painted version of its memory. The walk from the station to the center is where Lübbenau asks for patience. At first, the town feels residential. Neat houses, gardens, hedges, brick facades, small streets, the occasional car, a few pedestrians ahead. Nothing demands attention, and that is the point. Before the tourist harbor, before the boats and the crowds, there is everyday Lübbenau. This kind of approach changes how we see the place. The Spreewald is famous for its waterways, but it is also home. People live here between the rhythms of tourism and the quieter routines of a small Brandenburg town. Solar panels sit on roofs. Flower beds line the road. Cobblestones appear underfoot. Signs begin to point toward the center. The historic core does not arrive all at once. It gathers slowly. A curve in the street, older roof lines, more pedestrians, and then, in the distance, the church tower rising above the trees and houses. That gradual reveal is important. Lübbenau is not a city built to impress from far away. It is a town that becomes more interesting the closer you look. Lübbenau was first mentioned in medieval records in the early 14th century. But the story of settlement in this watery region is older than written documents. The Spreewald was shaped by Slavic, Sorbian, and Wendish communities, whose language, customs, and place names still belong to this landscape. Even the name Lübbenau has another layer, Lubnjow in Lower Sorbian.
Vorher gemacht und dann haben wir es.
Around the old town, the pace changes. The streets tighten. The surfaces become more textured, and the church rises over the market area like a quiet anchor. The church area gives the town a sense of continuity. Around it, you can read different chapters at once. Civic life, religious life, market life, and now the movement of visitors passing through with cameras and backpacks. What is striking is how relaxed it all feels. The church is not isolated as a monument. It stands inside the living town, with bicycles, cafes, signs, parked cars, and people crossing the square. History here is not behind glass. It is part of the route. Then, Lübbenau becomes stranger in the best possible way. At the Sagenhofter Brunnen, metal figures rise from the pavement and water spills from their mouths, hands, and strange sculpted forms. This is not a formal fountain of kings and angels. It feels mischievous, local, and deeply Spreewald. From the fountain, the walk turns toward the harbor, and the story begins to pull us toward water. The streets still feel solid. Brick walls, cobblestones, signs, small businesses, and the familiar movement of a town center. But now there are clues everywhere. A boat rental sign, narrow lanes, lower buildings, the sense that the ground itself is about to loosen into channels. The harbor is just ahead, but the anticipation is already doing its work. The town is leading us from pavement to reflection. And then the water appears. At first, it is almost intimate. A quiet canal under brick edges. Lily pads resting on the surface. Reflections of buildings and sky broken by small ripples. It is not a wide river. It is narrower, closer, more secretive. This is the heart of the Spreewald. The region is protected as a UNESCO biosphere reserve, recognized for a rare cultural landscape where people adapted to wetlands rather than simply draining them away. Channels became routes for fishing, farming, transport, and connection. Boats were not entertainment first, they were infrastructure. Lübbenau begins to make sense here. The town is not beside the Spreewald. It is threaded into it. The walk towards Schloss Lübbenau opens another chapter. After the canals, the path curves through cobblestone streets and older buildings, with signs of boat rentals and tourism, giving way to a quieter estate atmosphere. For centuries, towns like Lübbenau were shaped not only by farmers, boatmen, and traders, but also by noble families and landed estates. Schloss Lübbenau is part of that story. The castle district, reflects a different relationship to the landscape. Not the everyday labor of the waterways, but the ordering of land into gardens, parkland, paths, and views. In the park, around Schloss Lübbenau, the film can breathe. The images become broader and quieter, lawns opening under old trees, sunlight moving across grass, deep shade at the edges, paths that seem to invite wandering rather than direct arrival. After the canals and the town center, this space feels almost suspended. Parks like this are designed landscapes, but the best of them feel as if they have been negotiating with nature for generations. The trees are not props. They hold time. Their shadows slow the eye. Their scale makes the visitor smaller, which is sometimes exactly what travel should do. Here, the Spreewald story becomes less about movement and more about balance, human order and wild growth, estate history and public wandering, the open lawn and the dense forest beyond it. Nothing in this section needs to be over-explained. Let the quiet do some of the work. This is the part of the journey where Lübbenau stops performing and simply rests.
They should make it. It's amazing.
Beyond the park, the water returns in a more modern form. The camping and kayaking scenes show how the Spreewald is experienced today, not only from traditional punts, but from canoes and kayaks, by families, day trippers, and travelers who want to move at the speed of the current. A paddler slips along the canal under trees, and suddenly the old transport network becomes personal. This is one of the reasons the Spreewald still feels alive. The waterways have changed roles without losing their meaning. What once carried goods, harvests, mail, and daily life now carries visitors into silence, shade, and close contact with the landscape. Kayaking also changes the scale of the place. From the bank, the canal is scenic. From the water, it becomes a corridor. Every bend hides the next view. Every overhanging branch lowers the world a little closer. The Spreewald is not something you only look at, it is something you enter. Back in the center, Lübbenau reaches its busiest and most recognizable form. Lübbenau lies southeast of Berlin, at the edge of the Spreewald, a landscape where the river Spree once divided itself into a maze of channels, wetlands, and quiet forest paths. The harbor is full of movement. Long Spreewald cons with comfortable cushions, visitors waiting or already seated, boatmen guiding their craft with long poles, cafes under umbrellas, signs for departures, stalls, bridges, and people gathering at the water's edge. After the quiet walk and the reflective park, this feels like the town's main stage. But even here, the story is more than tourism. The Confahrt is rooted in a practical tradition. In a landscape where waterways once connected homes, fields, mills, and villages, flat-bottomed boats were essential. Today, they carry visitors, but they also preserve the memory of how people moved through this region before roads became dominant. That is why the harbor feels so layered. A boat tour may begin like a leisure activity, but it carries older knowledge. How to read shallow water, how to move silently, how to turn a narrow boat through a narrow channel, how to let the landscape unfold slowly. Around the harbor, Lübbenau also becomes social. People sit close to the water with coffee or food. Stalls and restaurants turn the canal edge into a meeting place. Tourists arrive in groups, but the atmosphere remains relaxed rather than frantic. The boats glide past the cafes, almost as if the town has two streets, one paved, one liquid. This is the clearest expression of Lübbenau's identity. It is not simply a pretty old town with canals. It is a place where everyday life, regional heritage, and the visitor economy all depend on the same element. Water is the attraction. Water is the history. Water is the route through the story. As the walk returns toward the church and the exit area, the town feels different from how it did at the beginning. The same streets are still there: cobblestones, facades, signs, bicycles, the church tower, people moving between cafes and corners. But after the canals, the folklore fountain, the park, the kayaks, and the busy harbor, these ordinary details carry more weight. Lübbenau is easy to treat as a gateway, a place you pass through on the way to the Spreewald. But the journey shows something richer. The gateway is part of the landscape's meaning. It is where trains meet boats, where old legends meet modern visitors, where Sorbian and Wendish memory still echoes through names, customs, and stories, and where a small town continues to organize itself around water.